1927. Commercial pilot Toribio Mejia Cesp wasn't expecting anything unusual as he navigated the empty expanse south of Lima. But then he saw it. Impossible shapes emerging from the desert floor. A perfect triangle stretching nearly a kilometer. A massive bird with wings spread wide. Geometric patterns that make no sense from his altitude. He blinks, thinking it's a trick of the light. But the forms remain crisp, deliberate, and utterly bewildering. These weren't natural formations. Someone made these. But who? And why create art that can only be seen from the sky? If you love ancient mysteries, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because today we're uncovering the secrets of the Nazca Lines, massive desert drawings that have puzzled the world for centuries. The answer lies with a civilization that flourished here centuries before the Inca Empire. The Nazca people inhabited these arid plains from around 200 BCE to 600 CE, creating one of the most sophisticated pre-Columbian cultures in South America. What's fascinating is the paradox. This was a society without written language, without the wheel, without metal tools. Yet they produced some of the most intricate pottery and textiles the ancient world ever saw. Their ceramics feature the same animal motifs we see etched into the desert floor: monkeys, hummingbirds, killer whales. Their textiles show complex patterns that mirror the geometric precision of the lines. They created these massive earth drawings using remarkably simple methods. Under the dark surface stones of the desert lies lighter-colored sand. The Nazca workers would remove the top layer of dark rocks, exposing the contrasting sand beneath. They used wooden stakes, rope, and basic surveying techniques. Nothing more sophisticated than that. The real mystery isn't the tools, but the precision. How did they maintain perfect proportions over distances of kilometers without being able to see their work from above? How did they keep straight lines running true across hills and valleys without modern instruments? They might have used scaled-down models or basic mathematics, but the accuracy is still staggering. They maintained these lines for centuries, constantly clearing away wind-blown debris to keep the designs visible. This wasn't a one-time project. It was a generations-long commitment to maintaining something they could never fully see themselves. Imagine walking across this desert floor. You'd see nothing but stones and sand stretching to the horizon. But from a few hundred feet up, the entire landscape transforms into the world's most mysterious art gallery. The Nazca created three main types of figures that still baffle us today. First, the biomorphs, those incredible animal and plant figures that seem to dance across the desert. The hummingbird, with its long, delicate beak perfectly proportioned, wings spread as if frozen in flight. The monkey, with its curiously spiraled tail that loops into an elaborate pattern. The spider, drawn with such anatomical accuracy that modern archaeologists can identify the exact species, a rare rainforest spider that the Nazca wouldn't have encountered in their desert home. Then there's the condor, with a wingspan stretching over 120 meters, larger than a Boeing 737's wings. Next come the geometric figures, the ones that really make you question everything. Perfect triangles that run straight for kilometers without deviating even a centimeter. Massive trapezoids that look like enormous runways from above. Spirals and zigzags that create optical effects when the sun hits them at certain angles. Some of these geometric shapes align with the solstices and equinoxes, suggesting they might have functioned as giant calendars. Then there are the straight lines, over 800 of them crisscrossing the desert. Some run perfectly parallel. Others radiate from central points like spokes on a wheel. Many lead to water sources or ceremonial centers. The longest stretches nearly 50 kilometers in a dead straight line across uneven terrain. And of course, there's the so-called astronaut figure, the one that launched 1,000 alien theories. Perched on a hillside, this stick figure with large round eyes seems to be waving. But archaeologists believe it's actually a shaman or deity figure, possibly representing a fisherman given the marine resources important to the Nazca. The round head is likely a ceremonial mask rather than a space helmet. The sheer scale is what overwhelms you. The hummingbird is 93 meters long. The condor stretches 134 meters. The lizard, now partially destroyed by road construction, was originally 180 meters long. Some trapezoids are over 800 meters wide. We're talking about figures so large they can only be properly appreciated from aircraft. yet created by people who never flew. What's even more remarkable is how they're preserved. The Nazca Desert is one of the driest places on Earth. It gets about 20 minutes of rain per year. The stones they moved to create these lines developed a dark desert varnish over centuries. By removing them, they created contrasting lines that have lasted millennia because the climate essentially froze them in time. Each figure seems more impossible than the last when you consider the context. They're not just random drawings. They're a coordinated system of symbols covering nearly 500 square kilometers of desert. The precision suggests mathematical knowledge we don't typically associate with ancient Peruvian cultures. The alignment with celestial events shows astronomical understanding. The variety suggests multiple purposes, some ceremonial, some practical, some perhaps meant as messages to forces beyond human understanding. While alien theories capture headlines, the most compelling explanation might be the simplest: water. In this brutally arid landscape where rain might not fall for years, water wasn't just a resource, it was life itself. The Nazca lived in one of the driest places humans have ever settled, surviving through sophisticated underground aqueduct systems called puquios that tapped into subterranean water sources. Enter Maria Reich, a German mathematician who dedicated her life to studying these lines. She arrived in Peru in the 1930s and became so fascinated by the geoglyphs that she lived in a small house near the desert for over 50 years. She measured, mapped, and protected these formations, often paying local farmers to keep their animals from damaging the lines. Her theory? The Nazca created these massive drawings as a giant astronomical calendar connected to water rituals. The evidence is surprisingly strong. Many of the straight lines point directly to mountain peaks where water originated from melting snow. During rare rainfall events, water would flow down from these mountains through riverbeds that run dry 99% of the year. The trapezoid shapes often point toward these water sources, almost like giant arrows saying "water here." The animal figures might represent deities associated with water: the hummingbird with its connection to rain, the monkey from the rainforest regions where water was abundant, even the spider whose web collects morning dew in the desert. Archaeologists have found ceremonial pottery and offerings at the endpoints of many lines, suggesting they were processional routes for water rituals. Imagine Nazca priests walking these lines during drought, performing ceremonies to appeal to mountain gods for life-giving water. The figures themselves might have been walked as ceremonial pathways, with rituals performed at specific points corresponding to astronomical events. The timing makes sense too. The Nazca culture collapsed around 600 CE, possibly due to extended drought combined with El Niño flooding that destroyed their agricultural systems. What better reason to create massive religious art than trying to prevent your civilization's extinction? The lines represent a desperate conversation with the gods. Please send water, please keep us alive. This theory also explains why they made art only visible from above. They weren't making it for human eyes. They were making it for the gods who lived in the mountains and sky. The precision wasn't about aesthetics. It was about getting the ritual exactly right. A misaligned calendar or incorrectly drawn figure might mean the gods wouldn't hear their prayers. In a world where survival depended on divine intervention, getting the details perfect mattered tremendously. The water theory connects the practical with the spiritual. The Nazca needed water to survive, so they created the most impressive religious monument imaginable to ask for it. The lines become not just art, but a survival strategy etched into the desert floor. Just as Maria Reich was measuring lines in the desert, across the ocean, an astronomer was looking at the stars with new technology. Gerald Hawkins had already cracked Stonehenge's astronomical code using early computers, and he thought he could do the same with the Nazca lines. In the 1960s, he fed every line and figure into an IBM 7090 computer, a machine that filled entire rooms, to find celestial alignments. The results were both compelling and controversial. Hawkins found that many lines pointed to significant astronomical events. The spider figure, with its elongated legs, aligned with the constellation Orion during specific seasons. The monkey's spiral tail seemed to track the Southern Cross. Several long lines marked the summer and winter solstices with precision that couldn't be coincidence. His computer analysis suggested the Nazca had created the world's largest astronomical calendar, tracking celestial cycles across generations. But here's where it gets complicated. Other researchers quickly pointed out problems. In a desert with hundreds of lines stretching in every direction, some are bound to align with stars simply by chance. When you have that many possibilities, statistical probability guarantees some matches. The counterargument gained traction. If you throw enough lines on the ground, some will inevitably point to something interesting in the sky. The mathematical precision argument still holds weight, though. The Nazca clearly understood geometry and astronomy better than we've given them credit for. Their pottery shows detailed knowledge of celestial events, and their agricultural cycle depended on accurate seasonal tracking. Even if not every line had astronomical significance, many likely served as giant observatory markers, Stone Age GPS for tracking the movements of sun, moon, and stars across the vast desert sky. Then came the theory that would capture the world's imagination and never let go. In 1968, Swiss author Erich von Däniken published Chariots of the Gods, and suddenly the Nazca Lines weren't just mysterious. They were evidence of extraterrestrial visitations. His books sold millions, suggesting these massive desert drawings were actually landing strips for ancient alien spacecraft. The perfect straight lines, runways for interstellar vehicles, the geometric shapes, navigation markers visible from orbit. That strange astronaut figure? Literally an ancient astronaut in a spacesuit. Von Däniken's timing was perfect. The space race was in full swing. Humanity had just landed on the moon, and people were looking at the stars with new wonder. His theory tapped into that excitement, suggesting that our ancestors hadn't been primitive at all. They'd been helped by advanced beings from other worlds. The idea spread like wildfire through popular culture, appearing in documentaries, books, and eventually countless internet forums. The alien hypothesis offered something appealing, a simple, spectacular answer to a complex mystery. Instead of trying to understand the Nazca's sophisticated cultural and religious practices, we could just say, aliens did it. The theory particularly resonated because it solved the viewing angle problem. Why create art you can't see? Because it wasn't for human eyes at all. It was for beings who flew. But this explanation created another problem. It essentially robbed the Nazca people of their achievements. Instead of recognizing their incredible engineering, astronomical knowledge, and cultural sophistication, the alien theory reduced them to primitive people who needed outside help to create something remarkable. Archaeologists would spend decades fighting this narrative, pointing out that we have overwhelming evidence of the Nazca's capabilities, their intricate textiles, sophisticated pottery, complex irrigation systems, and mathematical knowledge that we're still understanding. Mainstream archaeology pushed back hard against the ancient alien theories, and not just because they seemed far-fetched. The evidence for indigenous creation was overwhelming once you looked at the complete picture. The Nazca Lines didn't appear out of nowhere. They evolved from earlier traditions. The Paracas culture, which preceded the Nazca, created similar but smaller geoglyphs on hillsides where they were visible from the ground. The Nazca simply scaled up what their ancestors had been doing for centuries. Archaeologists found similar geoglyph traditions throughout the Andes, just not on the same massive scale. This wasn't some unique phenomenon. It was part of a broader cultural practice across the region. The psychological appeal of ancient astronaut theories says more about us than about the Nazca. We live in a technological age where we struggle to imagine how primitive people could achieve such precision, so we invent spacemen to explain it away. What gets lost in the alien theories is the incredible human achievement. The Nazca organized thousands of workers across generations to create and maintain these lines without written language, without modern tools, without any of the technology we consider essential for large-scale projects. The alien narrative diminishes their ingenuity, their mathematical knowledge, their understanding of astronomy and engineering. It's essentially saying these people couldn't have been this smart, so someone else must have done it. The reality is much more impressive. A sophisticated civilization created one of the world's most enduring mysteries using nothing but human intelligence, cooperation, and determination. They didn't need aliens. They had everything they needed right there in the desert. So how did a culture without even the wheel create these massive, precise formations? Experimental archaeology has given us some answers through actual field testing. Researchers have recreated Nazca techniques using only the tools available at the time: wooden stakes, rope, and human labor. They found that small teams could create remarkably straight lines using simple surveying methods. 3 stakes and a length of rope can create a perfect straight line over surprising distances when you know the technique. The scaling up process was likely done through mathematical proportion systems. The Nazca may have created small-scale models on prepared surfaces, then used grid systems or proportional measurement to replicate them at massive scale. We found evidence of such planning on pottery fragments and textiles. The maintenance was constant work. Teams would regularly walk the lines, clearing away wind-blown debris and replacing stones that had shifted. This wasn't a one-time construction project, but an ongoing religious duty that spanned generations. The organization required speaks to a highly structured society, coordinating hundreds of workers across kilometers of desert, maintaining food and water supplies for these work parties, passing down precise knowledge across generations without written language. This was an administrative achievement as impressive as the lines themselves. They developed sophisticated knowledge of geometry, astronomy, and engineering that we're still unraveling today, all without any technology we'd consider essential for such projects. Recent archaeological research has shifted focus from the sky back to the ground, literally. The ceremonial pathway theory suggests these lines weren't meant to be seen from above at all, but walked upon. Imagine hundreds of Nazca people processing along these massive pathways during religious ceremonies, their footsteps tracing the same routes generation after generation. We found evidence of walking paths along many lines, worn areas where countless feet have passed. Ceremonial vessels and offerings discovered at line endpoints suggest these were ritual routes, not static art. The connection to mountain worship makes perfect sense in this context. The Andes Mountains weren't just geological features. They were deities themselves, sources of life-giving water and spiritual power. Many lines point directly toward mountain peaks where rituals would be performed. Different community groups might have maintained specific figures as their ceremonial responsibility, creating a system of religious geography across the desert. The social cohesion required for this kind of project explains how they maintained it for centuries. It wasn't just art, it was living religion. This theory solves the viewing angle problem elegantly. The Nazca didn't need to see the complete figures because they experienced them through movement and ritual. Walking the hummingbird's outline might have been a prayer for rain, tracing the spider's legs a connection to the spirit world. The precision wasn't for aerial viewers, but for ritual accuracy. Getting the ceremony right mattered more than how it looked from above. The lines become not just drawings, but embodied religious practice, etched into the very ground they walked upon. While the ceremonial pathway theory explains the human experience of walking these lines, there's another layer that ties everything together: water mapping. The latest hydrological research reveals something astonishing. Many of the lines and trapezoids align almost perfectly with underground water sources. In a desert where surface water disappears within hours, knowing where to find subsurface aquifers meant the difference between life and death. The Nazca developed sophisticated underground aqueduct systems called puquios that tapped into these hidden water reserves, and the surface lines appear to mark exactly where these vital resources flowed beneath their feet. The correlation isn't coincidental. Advanced ground-penetrating radar and satellite imaging show that the trapezoid shapes often sit directly above subsurface water channels. The long straight lines frequently point toward mountain springs and water collection areas. Even the animal figures might serve as markers. The hummingbird could indicate a reliable water source, the monkey a seasonal stream, the spider a place where morning dew collects. This transforms the lines from purely ceremonial art into a practical survival system, a massive hydrological map etched into the desert floor. What makes this theory compelling is how it bridges the practical and spiritual. Water wasn't just physical sustenance for the Nazca, it was sacred. Their rituals weren't separate from survival, they were integral to it. Walking these lines during ceremonies might have been both a religious practice and a way to maintain knowledge of water locations across generations. The precision ensured that even during severe droughts, when surface markers might disappear, the ceremonial pathways would lead them to life-saving water sources. The lines become both prayer and practical guide, a divine map to the most precious resource in their world. But here's the question that keeps archaeologists awake at night. Why create something this magnificent if you can never see the complete picture? The Nazca walked these lines, experienced them footstep by footstep, but they could never appreciate the hummingbird's perfect symmetry or the spider's intricate legs from ground level. They were creating art for an audience they couldn't join, an audience in the sky. Some researchers suggest they might have developed simple balloon or kite technology. There's evidence the Nazca understood basic aerodynamics. Their textiles show kite-like designs, and they had access to materials that could create hot air balloons. A few experimental archaeologists have actually built working Nazca-style balloons using period-appropriate materials, proving it was technically possible to achieve brief flights. But there's no direct evidence they did this regularly. The more likely explanation involves the religious concept of deities viewing from above. For the Nazca, the gods lived in the mountains and sky. They had the perspective humans lacked. Creating art for divine viewers made perfect spiritual sense. The precision wasn't about human aesthetics, but about showing proper respect to beings who could see everything. A crooked line or disproportionate figure might offend the very gods they were trying to appease. There were also practical viewing platforms. Many lines are visible from nearby hillsides where ceremonies might have been conducted. The astronaut figure is actually positioned on a slope where it's partially visible from below. Some researchers suggest they might have built temporary observation towers or platforms, simple structures that wouldn't leave archaeological evidence after centuries. But perhaps the most intriguing possibility is that the invisibility was the point. These weren't meant to be seen by living humans at all. They might have been created for ancestors or deities, with the act of creation itself being the religious practice. The psychological impact of building something magnificent that you can never fully experience, that requires faith in a reality beyond human perception. The Nazca might have been comfortable with this paradox in ways we modern viewers struggle to understand. The mystery deepens when you consider maintenance. They kept these lines clean for centuries, clearing wind-blown debris from figures they could never see completed. This suggests the maintenance was itself a religious act, a form of walking meditation or ritual purification. Each stone replaced, each line cleared, was an act of devotion to forces beyond human comprehension. For 2,000 years, the dry climate protected these delicate lines better than any museum could. But modern threats have put this ancient art in unprecedented danger. The construction of the Pan American Highway in the 1930s literally cut through several figures. The lizard geoglyph was bisected, its tail destroyed forever. Today, that highway brings thousands of tourists whose footsteps, if uncontrolled, could erode the fragile desert surface. More recently, activists from Greenpeace damaged several lines during a publicity stunt, walking across protected areas and leaving footprints that may never fully disappear. Local farmers sometimes clear land too close to the figures, unaware they're destroying ancient art. Climate change brings new risks. Unpredictable rainfall patterns could cause erosion in a landscape that's been essentially frozen in time for millennia. UNESCO declared the lines a World Heritage Site in 1994, bringing international protection and funding. But preservation is a delicate balance. Tourism provides essential revenue for conservation, but too many visitors risk damaging what they've come to see. The Peruvian government has implemented viewing towers and strict flight regulations to minimize damage from aerial tourism. Maria Reich's legacy continues through the archaeologists who've dedicated their lives to protection. They work with local communities, educating farmers about the cultural treasure in their backyard. They use drone technology to monitor damage without disturbing the surface. They faced the constant challenge of protecting something that was never meant to be preserved. It was meant to be maintained through continuous ritual practice that ended centuries ago. The lines survive not as static museum pieces, but as living landscapes that still breathe with the desert wind. Their protection requires understanding that we're not just preserving art. We're safeguarding a conversation between humans and the divine that began 2 millennia ago. The real challenge is keeping that conversation going while preventing it from being loved to death by admirers who want to get too close. What is it about these desert drawings that captures our imagination so completely? It's the perfect storm of factors. the sheer scale that feels impossible for an ancient culture, the mystery of purpose that refuses a single answer, the accessibility of something that's been right there in the open for 2,000 years, yet only discovered recently. Each generation looks at these lines and sees its own reflection. The 1960s saw alien landing strips because we were looking to the stars. Today's researchers see water maps because we're facing climate crises. The Nazca Lines become a mirror for our own preoccupations. The human mind craves unsolvable mysteries. They remind us there are still wonders in the world that defy easy explanation. We could probably solve this mystery with enough research, but part of us doesn't want to. The unanswered question is more compelling than any answer could be. These lines tell us as much about ourselves as they do about the Nazca. Our need for wonder, our tendency to project our own world onto the past, our endless curiosity about those who came before us. After nearly a century of study, the desert keeps its secrets. The Nazca Lines remain one of archaeology's most beautiful mysteries, a testament to human creativity that transcends simple explanation. Whether they were messages to gods, water maps, celestial calendars, or something we haven't yet imagined, their power endures precisely because we may never know for certain. The real magic isn't in solving the mystery, but in keeping the conversation alive across centuries. What matters most is that a civilization without written language, without modern technology, created something that still speaks to us today. Their achievement stands regardless of purpose, a permanent reminder of human ingenuity etched into the earth itself. If you have your own theory about these incredible desert drawings, share it in the comments below. And if you want to explore more ancient mysteries that still puzzle archaeologists today, subscribe for our next investigation into history's greatest enigmas. Although we may never know all the secrets of the Nazca Lines, research reveals a lot. They were the work of a fascinating civilization that combined faith, astronomy, and water in enormous geoglyphs. Some lines served as ceremonial pathways. Others may mark water sources or track the movement of stars. One thing is certain, this was not the work of aliens, but of people with extraordinary imagination, knowledge, and dedication. The mystery of the lines still lives in the desert landscape, and all we can do is admire and learn. If you enjoyed this journey, leave a comment below and share your thoughts. And if you want to uncover more incredible mysteries from the past, keep watching Forgotten Scrolls and subscribe for more explorations into history's greatest enigmas.